The forest was quiet. Too quiet for a world once full of songs. Pale blue leaves shimmered under twin moons, and soft mist rolled between glowing roots. A small figure moved through the shadows, holding the hand of someone smaller. Lyra, the elder sister, guided little Nira deeper into the forest. Their bare feet left faint prints on the wet ground. Every few seconds, Lyra turned back, listening. The wind carried no bird song, only the faint hum of machines. "Are they still following us, sister?" Nira whispered. Her big violet eyes were full of fear. Lyra pressed a finger to her lips. "Quiet," she said softly. "We must stay unseen." Above them, small flying drones passed, their red lights sweeping through the fog. One beam came dangerously close. Lyra pulled Nira behind a fallen log, wrapping her arms around her trembling sister. The hum faded away again, but both girls knew it would return. The hunters never stopped. Somewhere far above, a human exploration craft floated in orbit. Its pilot, Captain Ethan Ward, leaned back in his seat, scanning the alien planet below. He wasn't supposed to land. The system was marked Restricted Zone, but then he heard it, a faint distress signal. It wasn't a coded message, just a weak repeating tone. Something inside him told him it wasn't just noise. He changed course. Down in the forest, the sisters reached the edge of a shallow river. The water glowed faintly under the light of the moons. Nira slipped on a rock and almost fell, but Lyra caught her quickly. "Careful," she whispered. "They can smell the water if we leave too many traces." She took a branch and brushed away their footprints behind them. Then they heard it again, the low, cold growl of engines. Not from the sky this time, but from the forest floor. The hunters had landed. Lyra's heart raced. Her mother had told her stories of humans, but those stories were long forgotten on this side of the galaxy. The hunters were not human. They were mercenaries, metal-faced creatures who captured anyone who still carried royal blood. And Lyra? She carried it. "Lyra," Nira said again, her voice shaking. "Why do they want us?" Lyra knelt and held her sister's face between her hands. "Because we are the last," she said softly. "But you must live, do you understand?" "You must live even if I—" She stopped, swallowing the words. Nira hugged her tightly, not wanting to let go. The air suddenly filled with light as a beam swept across the trees. Lyra froze. The hunter's scanners had found something. She looked around quickly and saw a hollow tree nearby, large enough to hide Nira. "Inside," she said. "Now, but no time." Lyra pushed her little sister inside and covered the opening with moss and broken leaves. "Stay quiet no matter what happens," she whispered. "Promise me?" Nira nodded, tears already in her eyes. Lyra smiled weakly. "Good girl." Then she stepped away from the tree, standing alone in the open. The sound of footsteps grew louder. Heavy boots, mechanical breathing, the click of weapons being armed. From between the trees, 5 figures appeared. They were tall, armored in black metal with silver marks across their helmets. One of them lifted a scanning device. "Target located," a cold voice said. "Female, approximately 15 cycles. Secondary life form nearby." Lyra's pulse thundered in her ears. She had no weapon, no hope of escape. But she lifted her chin. She would not let them take Nira. Far away, Ethan's ship entered the atmosphere. Flames flickered along the hull as it passed through the clouds. His radar flicked with strange readings. Heat signatures, multiple contacts, and one faint life signal weaker than the rest. He frowned. "This place is supposed to be empty," he muttered. "Guess command was wrong again." The moment he stepped out of his craft, he smelled burning ozone. The forest was alive with electric lights. He moved quietly, following the trail of boot prints and strange symbols marked into the ground. Then faintly he heard something, a voice. Not human, a whisper carried by the wind. "Don't cry no matter what happens." Lyra stood in the center of a circle of glowing leaves, her long silver hair falling over her shoulders. Her body shook, but her eyes never left the hunters. One of them raised his weapon. Another moved closer, scanning her face. "There are 2, the leader said. "Find the other." At those words, Lyra's blood turned cold. Nira moved slightly in the hollow tree and a tiny sound escaped her, a small gasp. The nearest hunter turned his head sharply. "There!" he shouted. Lyra's heart stopped. She stepped forward at once, spreading her arms wide. "No!" she screamed. "Take me instead." Her voice echoed through the glowing forest like thunder, bouncing off the mist and the trees. The hunters paused, surprised by her sudden bravery. For a heartbeat, even the forest went still. High above, Ethan's scanner picked up the shout. He froze, eyes narrowing. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. And before his mind could stop him, his heart made the choice. He grabbed his rifle and sprinted toward the sound. Back in the forest, Lyra stood tall under the moonlight, facing her captors. Her breath was quick, her hands trembling, but her resolve was unbroken. "You came for me," she said, her voice calm now. "Then take me." "Leave her." The leader tilted his helmet slightly. "How noble," he said coldly. "But we don't make bargains with prey." Lyra's eyes hardened. "You should." The wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of engines in the distance, the human's ship approaching. The hunters didn't notice, but Lyra felt something change in the air, something powerful and unseen. And far above the treetops, the first human footstep touched alien soil. The mist thickened around the forest as the night deepened. Blue fireflies floated above the glowing roots, and the air smelled of smoke and fear. Lyra stood frozen, her chest rising fast while the hunters slowly circled her. Their armor gleamed like cold stone, and their metal masks hid every trace of mercy. She could hear her sister breathing inside the hollow tree, trying not to cry. Every sound in the forest felt too loud. The leader raised his wrist and tapped a small device. A faint red pulse shot into the sky, blinking twice before vanishing into the clouds. It was the hunter's signal, a beacon calling the rest of their squad. Lyra's heart sank. More would come soon. "Do not resist," the leader said in a deep mechanical tone. "You are royal blood. Surrender peacefully, royal blood." The words stabbed through her like a knife. She didn't want that title. It was the reason her family was gone. The hunters had destroyed their village, burned their homes, and taken everyone they found. Only she and Nira had escaped. Now, after all this time, they had been found again. Lyra forced her voice to stay calm. "If you hurt my sister, I will fight you until I stop breathing." The hunters exchanged a cold laugh, more like the hiss of static than a real sound. One of them stepped closer, lowering his blaster. "Fight with what? You are nothing but a child." He didn't notice the branch in her hand until it cracked against his helmet. Sparks flew as he stumbled back. The others raised their weapons instantly, lights flashing across the mist. Lyra ran, zigzagging between trees. Energy bolts hit the ground around her, burning small craters into the soft soil. Inside the hollow tree, Nira covered her mouth, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She wanted to scream her sister's name, but didn't. Lyra had told her not to. So she stayed still, shaking in the dark, whispering a prayer to the stars. Far above the forest, Captain Ethan Ward's ship picked up the red pulse. The signal matched no known military code. "That's not a distress beacon," he muttered, frowning at the radar. "That's a kill zone marker." His hand tightened on the control stick. Who the hell is down there? He switched on his helmet camera and activated his body shield. "AI, open external mic." "Ready," said the ship's soft voice. "Mark the signal coordinates." "I'm going in." Ethan jumped from the craft, landing hard between the trees. His boots sank slightly into the glowing moss. He crouched low, scanning the forest ahead. Through the mist, he could see flashes, energy fire, blue plasma, and shadows moving fast. His suit amplified the sound, shouting metal and a girl's voice crying out. He ran toward it. Back near the river, Lyra stumbled and fell. Her knee hit a rock, pain shooting up her leg. She tried to stand, but the leader of the hunters appeared before her. His armor made no sound as he moved. "Enough," he said, pointing his weapon at her chest. "Surrender, and the little one will be spared." Lyra glared at him. "You lie. You always lie," he tilted his head. "Then you choose death." Before he could fire, a loud blast echoed through the trees. A burning streak of plasma struck the ground between them, throwing dirt and sparks into the air. The hunters turned sharply, scanning the direction of the shot. From the shadows, a tall figure stepped out, human armored in black, holding a glowing rifle. Ethan's voice boomed through his helmet speaker. "Step away from the girl." The hunters raised their weapons instantly. "Human?" one hissed, surprised. "This world is off limits." "Yeah," Ethan said, leveling his rifle. "I noticed, but I don't like seeing children hunted." Before the hunters could respond, he fired again. The plasma shot hit one square in the chest, sending him crashing into a tree. The rest scattered for cover. Lyra crawled behind a rock, watching in disbelief as the stranger fought. She had never seen a human before. His armor was battered, his movements sharp but desperate. This was no soldier from the old legends. Yet he stood alone against trained killers. Ethan ducked behind a trunk as energy bolts slammed into his shield. His AI spoke calmly in his ear. Warning. Shield energy at 60%. Yeah, thanks, he muttered, switching to pulse grenades. He threw one toward the hunters. The explosion lit up the mist like lightning. 2 more fell, but the leader remained, retreating into cover. Lyra's heart pounded. She wanted to help, but she had nothing, no weapon, no power. Only her will. She looked toward the hollow tree. Nira was still hidden, safe for now. That was all that mattered. Ethan pushed forward, taking out the last drone above their heads. Sparks rained down. Area secure, his AI confirmed. But Ethan knew better. The leader had vanished. Then, out of nowhere, a red beam cut through the fog, hitting Ethan's side. He dropped to one knee, groaning. His shield flickered. Lyra gasped and ran toward him. Stay back, he shouted, but she ignored him. She knelt beside him, pressing her hands over the wound. The strange human blood, dark and thick, spread over her fingers. You saved me, she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan looked up at her through his cracked visor. Couldn't just watch, he said weakly. Behind them, the leader raised his weapon again, aiming at both of them. Pathetic, he sneered. A dying human and a royal child. But before he could fire, the forest trembled with a deep rumble. The ground shook. In the sky above, something massive moved. Another ship entering the atmosphere, responding to the hunter's beacon. Lyra looked up, eyes wide with horror. The leader smiled under his mask. My brothers have arrived. Ethan gritted his teeth, forcing himself up. Then I guess it's going to be a long night. As thunder rolled across the forest, the red light of the hunter's signal pulsed again, brighter this time, warning every creature on the planet that war had just begun. The forest burned with red light. Sparks rained down from the hovering hunter ship above, slicing through the fog like blades of fire. Lyra clutched Nira's trembling hand, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. Around them, the trees glowed faintly, their leaves whispering in the heat. The hunters had returned in full force, armored shadows with glowing visors spreading out through the forest like a net. Ethan crouched behind a fallen tree, breathing heavily. His armor was scorched, his left arm stiff from the wound. His helmet displayed warnings in flashing red, energy low. %. He wiped the blood from his lip and looked toward the 2 alien girls hiding among the roots. He didn't understand who they were, but he knew one thing: he couldn't leave them to die. AI, he whispered. Scan for exit routes. Negative. Surrounding radius occupied. 14 hostiles inbound, replied the calm voice. Ethan sighed. Great odds. He checked his last 2 grenades. Let's make them count. Lyra turned to him, eyes wide. You can't fight them all. Wasn't planning to, he said. Just need to slow them down. She didn't understand his bravery. No one ever risked their life for her kind. Yet this human, wounded, outnumbered, and alone, stood between her and an army. A booming voice echoed through the forest. Royal blood. Come out and we will spare the child. Lyra froze. She could feel Nira's small fingers tighten around hers. They mean me, she whispered. They always do. Ethan leaned against the log, reloading his weapon. They're bluffing. No, she said softly, shaking her head. They want me alive. For the bounty? Her voice cracked. They will kill her if I don't go. The hunters advanced, their metal boots crushing roots underfoot. One of them shouted, You have 10 seconds to comply. Nira whimpered and Lyra hugged her tightly. Don't make a sound, she whispered. The air hummed with power as the hunters' weapons charged. The leader stepped forward, his black armor shining in the firelight. He raised his hand. 5 seconds. Lyra's mind raced. Her people had always believed that one life could protect another, that sacrifice could bend destiny. Maybe this was the only way to keep Nira safe. She kissed her sister's forehead. Stay hidden, she said. No matter what. Then she stood up. Lyra. Ethan grabbed her wrist. Don't. She looked at him, her silver eyes full of tears. You saved us once. Now let me save her. Before he could stop her, she stepped into the open. The mist swirled around her like silver smoke. I'm here, she shouted. Her voice echoed through the forest. Take me instead. The hunters paused. Even the hum of their engines seemed to fade. The leader tilted his head. Ah, the brave one. Nira bit her hand to stop a cry, watching through the hollow tree. Her sister stood alone, surrounded by fire and death, her thin figure glowing under the red sky. Ethan clenched his fists. He wanted to rush out, but his shield was gone, his ammo low. His brain screamed for him to stay hidden, but his heart burned too loud. He'd seen too many die while he stood by. Not this time. The leader approached Lyra. "You think we'll spare the little one? Foolish creature." He raised his weapon, and then, before he could pull the trigger, a blue bolt hit him square in the chest. He stumbled backward, smoke rising from his armor. Ethan burst from the shadows, firing rapidly. "Run!" he shouted. "Move!" Lyra froze for half a second, then grabbed Nira from the tree. Together they dashed through the burning forest as Ethan covered them. Energy beams sliced through the air. One hit a nearby tree, which exploded into glowing shards. "AI, redirect all power to thrusters," Ethan shouted. His boots flared with blue light as he leapt over a log, landing between the sisters and the hunters. His rifle clicked empty. "Out of ammo." "Recommendation, retreat," said the AI. "Yeah, working on it." He tossed his last grenade and the explosion lit up the clearing. The hunters fell back, blinded by smoke. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. "This way." They ran toward the river. The water glowed faintly, reflecting the chaos in the sky. Behind them, the forest roared with fire and gunshots. Ethan's suit alarm beeped again. Shield failure imminent. When they reached the riverbank, he turned to face the approaching lights. "Go," he said, pushing Lyra gently. "Take her and run." Lyra shook her head. "You'll die." Not if you move fast. She didn't move. For the first time in her life, someone had protected her, not because of her blood, but because of who she was. She couldn't just leave him. The leader emerged from the smoke, his armor cracked but still glowing. "You can't win, human," he said coldly. "You are just one." Ethan smiled faintly. "One is usually enough." He stepped forward, gun raised, though it was empty. The hunter laughed, lifting his own weapon. Bravery means nothing against power. At that moment, Nira's small voice rang out, trembling but strong. "No, leave him alone." The leader turned his head slightly, and in that instant Lyra lunged forward, pushing Ethan aside. The energy blast struck her instead. The sound tore through the night. Lyra fell to her knees, smoke rising from her chest. Nira screamed and ran to her, wrapping her arms around her body. "Lyra, please." "Open your eyes." Ethan dropped to his knees beside them, eyes wide with shock. "No, no, no." He pressed his hands to the wound, but the light was fading fast. Lyra's lips moved slightly. "Promise me. Keep her safe." "I promise," Ethan said, his voice breaking. Her hand fell limp. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the hunters paused, their weapons lowering slightly as the wind carried Nira's sobs through the trees. Ethan stood slowly, rage burning in his eyes. The human in him, the soldier, the protector, awoke fully. He turned toward the remaining hunters, fists clenched. "You wanted royal blood?" he said quietly. "Now you'll face human wrath." The AI in his helmet detected a power surge, his suit's emergency reserves activating, and as lightning cracked across the sky, Ethan charged alone into the storm, roaring like a man who had nothing left to lose. The rain began to fall over the burning forest, hissing as it hit the scorched ground. Steam rose in ghostly waves, turning the air into a blur of red and blue light. The bodies of fallen hunters smoked among the roots, their armor cracked open like broken shells. But more shadows moved through the fog, dozens of them, metal giants closing in from every side. Ethan stood in the center of the chaos, his armor half melted, his chest heaving with pain and fury. His eyes were fixed on Lyra's still body lying beside the riverbank. The younger one, Nira, knelt beside her sister, crying quietly, holding her cold hand. Every tear that fell seemed to echo louder than the thunder above. The hunters spread out around them, their boots crushing the wet soil. The leader stepped forward again, his armor now glowing with a faint red core. "You fight well, human," he said, his voice metallic and calm. "But your kind has no place here." Ethan tightened his grip on his blaster. It was nearly empty, but he didn't care. "Neither do you," he growled. "Stand down," the leader warned. "Leave the child. You may live." Ethan's face darkened. "You've already taken one life too many." He looked at Nira, her small hands shaking, her eyes wide and lost. "I won't let you take her too." The rain hit harder, soaking through his armor. His AI's voice buzzed in his ear, cold and logical. "Captain Ward, your chances of survival are below 8%. Retreat is advised." "Not this time," Ethan muttered. Not after what they did. He activated his emergency override. His armor hummed as hidden circuits came alive, glowing faintly blue beneath the surface. The system siphoned energy from the damaged core into his limbs, boosting his strength beyond normal limits. It would burn him out in minutes, but that was enough. Ethan stepped forward, eyes locked on the leader. You wanted a war? You've got one. He fired first. A bright plasma shot hit the nearest hunter, sending him crashing back into a tree. Before the others could react, Ethan charged, his armor slamming into two more, knocking them aside like toy soldiers. He grabbed one by the neck, twisted, and tore the breathing tube from its helmet. The creature fell gasping, sparks flying. The leader roared and opened fire. Bolts of red energy struck Ethan's armor, burning through the metal. The pain hit him like fire, but he didn't stop. He rolled behind a log, tossed a flash charge, and lunged through the smoke. He hit the leader square in the chest, both of them crashing into the mud. Why protect alien scum? The leader spat, punching Ethan hard across the helmet. She's not even your kind. Ethan gritted his teeth. That's the difference between us. He head-butted the leader's visor, cracking it open. We don't need to be the same to care. The hunter swung his arm, sending Ethan sprawling. His weapon clattered into the mud. He stood over Ethan, aiming his blaster directly at his chest. Your courage dies with you, human. But then the leader hesitated. A strange sound cut through the noise of battle, a soft hum building into a sharp tone. The hunter looked down and saw something blinking on Ethan's wrist, a small disc pulsing blue. Ethan smiled grimly. You forgot one thing. The explosion tore through the clearing like a storm. The blast threw mud, fire, and broken armor into the air. Nira screamed and ducked behind a rock as the shock wave flattened the trees. When the smoke cleared, the forest was silent again except for the rain. Ethan lay on his back, breathing heavily. His armor was half destroyed, the energy core flickering weakly. Around him lay the hunters, broken, scattered, defeated. The leader was still alive, crawling toward his weapon, his armor sparking. Ethan pushed himself up, limping over. You humans, the leader hissed, his voice glitching. You never stop fighting. Ethan knelt beside him, pressing the muzzle of his pistol to the creature's head. That's what keeps us alive. He fired once. The red light in the hunter's eyes faded forever. Nira came running, slipping in the mud, and threw her arms around Ethan's leg. You saved me again, she sobbed. But my sister, she won't wake up. Ethan looked down at Lyra's still form. He knelt beside her, his hands trembling. Her skin was pale now, glowing faintly under the rain. He touched her cheek gently. She's gone, kid, he said softly. But she saved you. Nira shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She can't be gone. She promised we'd see the stars together. Ethan looked at her, his jaw tightening. He couldn't tell her the truth, that no medicine or miracle could bring her sister back. But then something flickered across his visor. A reading, wait, he whispered. He scanned Lyra's body again. There, a faint signal, weak but still there. Captain, his AI said, detecting it too. Unstable life signs detected. The alien's neural activity is minimal but not zero. Ethan's heart leapt. She's still alive. He looked at Nira. Help me lift her. Together they carried Lyra toward the edge of the river. Ethan knelt beside the water, opening a small compartment on his wrist plate. He pulled out a glowing injector capsule. This isn't made for her species, he muttered. But it might work. He pressed it against her neck and activated it. The serum glowed blue as it entered her veins. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, Lyra's chest rose with a shallow breath. Nira gasped, covering her mouth. She's breathing. Ethan smiled faintly, relief washing over him. Told you, kid. Humans don't give up. But before he could say another word, the sky above them thundered again. He looked up and froze. 3 massive ships descended through the clouds, their engines rumbling like gods. The hunter's main fleet had arrived. Ethan stood slowly, shielding Nira behind him. Of course, he muttered. Round 2. The rain poured harder, lightning flashing across the sky as the ships opened their hatches. Soldiers poured out like shadows. Ethan raised his weapon, the last bit of charge flickering in the barrel. He glanced at Nira and Lyra one more time. Stay low, he said. No matter what happens. Then he turned back toward the incoming storm, his eyes hard, his heart steady. He knew he wouldn't survive this battle, but he would make sure the sisters did. And as thunder roared above the ruined forest, one lone human stood tall, defying the galaxy itself. The night sky cracked open with thunder as the hunter fleet descended. Their ships hovered above the ruined forest like metal vultures, casting red light over the burned trees. Wind roared through the clearing, flattening the mist and scattering ash across the ground. Ethan stood in the center, his armor scorched, his weapon glowing faintly with its last charge. Behind him, Nira knelt beside her barely breathing sister, whispering her name again and again. "Lyra, please wake up," she cried softly. "You can't leave me." Ethan's visor flickered with warnings, shield depleted, energy critical, heart rate unstable. But he ignored them. His focus was on the fleet above. Dozens of dropships were deploying, their wings slicing through the rain. He knew there was no winning this. The only thing left was to buy time. "AI," he said quietly. "Transmit distress to Earth Command. Priority 1. The soft voice replied. "Signal cannot penetrate interference. Suggest relocation." He looked at the forest behind him, burning, broken, full of fallen hunters. There was nowhere to go. "Then we make our own signal," he said grimly. He knelt beside Nira. The little alien girl looked up at him with tears streaming down her luminous cheeks. "Will we die?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Not today." Lyra stirred suddenly, gasping for breath. Her eyes fluttered open for a brief moment, silver and full of pain. Where are we?" she whispered. Ethan leaned closer. "You're safe. Don't move." She shook her head weakly. "They're not done. They'll come again." "I know," Ethan said softly. "Let me handle it." But Lyra reached for his arm, gripping it weakly. "Promise me. If we fall, don't let them take her." He nodded once. "I promise." The sound of engines grew louder. The lead dropship landed at the edge of the clearing. The ground shook. A ramp opened and more armored hunters stepped out, larger, heavier, and crueler than before. Their leader, a massive figure with glowing red eyes, stepped forward holding a staff that pulsed with energy. Ethan raised his blaster, even though it was almost dead. "Guess you're the big boss." The hunter tilted his head. "You killed my soldiers," he said in a calm, mechanical tone. "Impressive. For something so fragile." Ethan grinned bitterly. "Funny, they said the same thing before I buried them." The hunter's eyes burned brighter. "This is your last breath, human." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but I'm making it count." The leader raised his staff. "Fire!" The air exploded with red light. Bolts of energy tore across the clearing, slamming into trees and soil. Ethan ran between them, diving and rolling, returning fire. Each shot from his rifle struck with deadly precision, but the power cell drained fast. His armor took hit after hit and smoke poured from his shoulder plate. Still, he didn't stop. Nira watched in horror as the human stood alone against a storm of plasma. Her small body trembled. Her chest hurt so much she could hardly breathe. She wanted to scream. But something deep inside her began to glow. It started as a whisper, a pulse of light inside her chest like the beat of a second heart. Her sister's bloodline, the lost royal line of their people, carried something ancient, a voice that reached across distance, a sound that could touch the stars. When Nira screamed this time, it wasn't fear, it was power. A bright shockwave burst from her tiny body, spreading through the clearing. The hunters froze, their sensors overwhelmed. Ethan's helmet buzzed with static. "What the hell?" The wave of sound rose higher, sharper, brighter, like music woven into lightning. It wasn't just a cry, it was a call. Far above, in orbit, satellites caught the strange pulse. It moved faster than light, leaping from ship to ship, spreading through communication channels across the sector. It carried emotion, pain, and something else. A message. Across distant colonies, human ships detected it. The signal was faint, but clear enough. "Help. They're killing us." On the bridge of an Earth Navy cruiser, an officer stood up. "Sir, we're receiving an unregistered SOS. Source, Uncharted System 49K. The commander frowned. "Patch it through." A sound filled the room, the voice of a child crying mixed with static and thunder. The crew went silent. "Is that a human distress tone?" "No, sir," the technician whispered. "But it's asking for us." The commander stared at the screen. "Prepare a jump, now." Back on the planet, Ethan held Nira as she collapsed from exhaustion. Her glow dimmed, but she smiled weakly. "They'll hear it," she whispered. "They'll come." Ethan looked at her, realization dawning. "That sound, you sent it?" She nodded slowly. My mother once said our voices can cross the void. I didn't believe her. Until now. The hunters were regrouping, shaking off the shock. Their leader growled, pointing his staff. Enough of this. He fired again, hitting Ethan's armor squarely. The blast knocked him down. Pain exploded through his chest, but he forced himself up, gasping. You're too late, he said, blood on his lips. They heard her, the leader sneered. Even if they come, they'll find nothing but ashes. Ethan gritted his teeth. Then I'll make sure those ashes bury you first. He triggered the failsafe on his armor. The core began to glow, bright and unstable. AI, he said calmly. Begin overload countdown. Confirm detonation sequence? Confirmed. He turned to Nira and Lyra. When I say run, you run and don't look back. Nira's eyes widened. But go, he said softly. Your sister needs you, and you both need to live. The leader's eyes flickered as his sensors detected the power surge. What are you doing? Ethan smiled faintly. Finishing the job. As the hunters advanced, lightning flashed, thunder boomed, and Ethan's armor pulsed like a small star. The AI's voice echoed in his helmet. Detonation in 10-9. He whispered one last thing under his breath, looking toward the girls. For humanity. Then he charged. A blinding light filled the forest, brighter than any dawn. The explosion shook the planet, sending shockwaves that reached orbit. Far above, human ships emerging from hyperspace caught the final flash. The commander stared at the sensors, eyes wide. Whoever sent that signal, they weren't lying. There's someone down there worth saving. And so began the rescue that would echo across stars. The world was silent after the blast. The forest that once burned red was now nothing but black ash and glowing embers. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a heavy mist that clung to everything. Smoke curled upward like lost ghosts trying to find their way home. In the middle of the ruin lay a deep crater where Ethan Ward had made his final stand. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then a faint sound broke the silence, Nira's soft sob. The little alien girl crawled through the ash, her silver skin streaked with soot, clutching her sister's hand. Lyra was still breathing, but barely. Her once bright eyes flickered weakly under half-closed lids. Lyra, Nira whispered, her voice trembling. It's over. The hunters are gone. Lyra tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Her body felt heavy, as if gravity itself wanted to pull her down forever. She managed to lift her hand and touch her sister's face. You're safe, she whispered faintly. That's all that matters. Nira shook her head. No, you both have to be safe. He promised. At the mention of he, her eyes darted to the crater, the place where the human had vanished. The ground still glowed faintly blue, tiny sparks flickering like dying stars. Ethan, she called softly, please answer me. No response came, only the distant roll of thunder and the hiss of cooling metal. Then, far above the clouds, the night sky tore open again, this time, with light. A massive shadow descended through the mist, cutting through the clouds like a blade of silver. The engines roared as a fleet of human ships entered the atmosphere. Their hulls gleamed under the twin moons, their insignias glowing with the mark of Earth Command. Inside the lead ship, the commander gave the order. Deploy rescue units. Find the source of that signal. Dropships poured down like comets, their thrusters kicking up waves of dust and smoke as they landed around the impact zone. Nira shielded her eyes from the blinding light as soldiers stepped out, their helmets scanning the area. The insignia on their chest plates shimmered. United Human Fleet. One of the soldiers knelt beside the crater, holding up a scanner. We've got survivors, he shouted. Another soldier ran to Nira and Lyra, dropping to his knees. They're kids. Aliens, but breathing. He pressed his comms. Medic team now. Nira backed away slightly, still frightened. Who are you? The soldier removed his helmet. His face was kind, human, his voice gentle. We're here because of your signal. Because of him. He pointed to the crater. The medics arrived quickly, scanning the area. Their devices beeped frantically as they moved toward the faint blue glow inside the crater. One of them stopped suddenly. Wait, we're picking up human biosigns. Weak but active. Nira's heart leapt. Ethan? The medics jumped down into the crater, their light sweeping across the blackened ground. Then they saw it, a battered, half-melted figure lying in the center. His armor was shattered, the visor cracked, smoke rising from the core. Get the stretcher, one shouted. He's still alive, When they lifted him, his hand twitched faintly, fingers curling weakly in the air. Neera saw it and gasped. "He's alive!" "I knew it." The medics placed him in a pod, sealing it with a hiss of steam. Inside, faint light pulsed around him, stabilizing his body. Lyra opened her eyes weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "He came back for us." Neera nodded, tears falling freely. He never broke his promise. Hours passed. The sun rose over the wrecked forest, painting the ashes gold. Human engineers set up camps around the crash site, scanning for remaining hunter ships. The air buzzed with quiet purpose. For the first time, this world saw hope. Ethan woke briefly inside the med pod. His vision was blurry, his breathing shallow. Through the glass, he saw two small figures standing beside him, Neera holding Lyra's hand. He tried to smile, but the oxygen mask pressed against his face. Neera pressed her palm against the glass. "You did it," she whispered. "You brought the light back." His eyes softened. "Couldn't let it end in darkness," he murmured weakly, his voice muffled. Then he closed his eyes again, falling into a healing sleep. The commander of the rescue fleet walked over, his boots crunching softly over the ash. He looked down at the sisters, then at the ruined world. "You said he saved you?" Neera nodded slowly. "He saved everyone. Even those who hated him." The commander's gaze softened. "Then this world owes him more than it can repay." He turned to his crew. "Get them aboard. They're coming with us." As the ship lifted off hours later, the forest below glowed faintly where the explosion had once been. New sprouts shimmered among the ash, tiny green leaves pushing through the dark soil. Lyra, resting in a recovery pod beside Ethan's, opened her eyes again. Through the glass, she could see him breathing steadily now. A faint smile touched her lips. "He didn't just save us," she whispered. "He saved this world." Neera sat beside her, gazing out the viewport as the ship broke through the clouds. For the first time, she saw the stars clearly, millions of them shining bright and endless. She pressed her small hand against the window. "Lyra," she said softly, "do you think he'll wake up soon?" Lyra smiled weakly. "Humans don't give up, remember?" As the ship drifted away from the planet, its engines glowing like twin suns, a transmission began to spread through the galaxy, the same one Neera had sent, now rebroadcast by Earth Command. Only this time it carried a message of hope. The stars drifted slowly outside the viewport, glowing like tiny lanterns in the black sea of space. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence, steady and calm, as if the galaxy itself was breathing again. Inside the medbay of the Earth Command cruiser Dauntless, two figures lay sleeping, Lyra and the human who had changed everything, Captain Ethan Ward. Weeks had passed since the battle on the forest world. The once barren planet was now declared under human protection, and reconstruction teams were on the surface, planting seeds where fire had raged. Yet inside the ship, one small story was still unfolding, a story not of war, but of promises. Neera sat beside Ethan's recovery pod, her legs dangling from the chair. Her once tattered clothes had been replaced by a small gray uniform gifted by the crew. In her hands she held a small crystal charm, Lyra's, cracked during the battle. Every day she came here to talk to Ethan even though he never answered. "They say you'll wake up soon," she whispered. "The doctor said your heart is strong. Just resting. Lyra says humans are stubborn." She smiled faintly. "I think she's right." Behind her, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Lyra entered, her steps light but sure. Her body was healed now, though a faint scar traced across her collarbone glowing softly under her skin. Her eyes, once dimmed by pain, now carried the same quiet fire Ethan once had. "You're here again," Lyra said softly, smiling. Neera nodded. "He still hasn't opened his eyes." Lyra walked closer to the pod and rested her hand on the glass. Ethan looked peaceful inside, his face calm beneath the thin oxygen mask. The lights on his life support panel pulsed steadily, green and alive. "He's a strange one," Lyra whispered. "He didn't even know us. He could have left." "But he didn't." Neera looked up at her sister. "Do humans always keep their promises?" Lyra's lips curved into a small smile. "The good ones do." At that moment, the ship's speakers crackled to life. A soft human voice echoed through the medbay. "Attention all crew. Earth Command has officially declared the survivors of the Elvane royal line as diplomatic guests under human protection. A ceremony will be held in the observation hall within the hour. Lyra blinked. Diplomatic guests? Nira's eyes widened. They mean us. Lyra shook her head slowly. No, they mean you. I was never meant to rule anything. You were born with the royal mark. She reached out and touched Nira's forehead where a faint silver shimmer now glowed. Our people will need someone to speak for them again. But I can't do that without you, Nira said, her eyes filling with tears. You can, Lyra whispered, because you'll never be alone again. She turned her gaze toward the human sleeping behind the glass. He made sure of that. Just then the soft beeping on Ethan's pod changed rhythm. Lyra froze. Nira gasped. The lights flickered on the console, once slow and steady, now faster. Ethan's fingers twitched slightly. His head moved just a fraction. The monitor displayed a surge in brain activity. Lyra, Nira cried. He's waking up. Both sisters leaned close as Ethan's eyelids fluttered. For a long moment he seemed lost between dreams and reality. Then slowly his eyes opened, tired, confused, but unmistakably alive. He looked at them for a moment, then smiled weakly. Guess I missed the ceremony. Nira laughed through her tears, hugging the glass. You came back. Lyra's eyes shimmered. You promised, she said softly. Ethan blinked, recognizing her voice. Yeah, he whispered. I keep my promises. Days later, the ship anchored in orbit over the restored world. The observation deck was filled with both humans and Elvane survivors rescued from hiding. When Lyra and Nira entered the hall, dressed in white robes marked with silver threads, the crowd went silent. Behind them walked Ethan, still weak but standing tall, wearing his patched Earth Command uniform. The commander stepped forward. Captain Ethan Ward, he said formally, for your courage and your defense of innocent lives, you are hereby awarded the Star of Humanity, the highest honor in our fleet. Applause echoed through the hall, but Ethan simply smiled and turned to the sisters. I don't deserve this alone, he said. The real heroes are right there. Nira blushed and shook her head. You saved us, Ethan smiled. You saved everyone when you cried out. Your voice crossed light years, kid. You did what no one else could. Lyra looked up at the stars through the glass dome. Your people heard our pain. They came for us. You showed the galaxy what humanity really means. Ethan folded his arms, gazing at the stars with her. Sometimes it just takes one spark to remind the universe we're still human. As the ceremony ended, Nira tugged on his sleeve. Ethan, she asked softly, where will you go now? He looked at her for a moment, then smiled faintly. I don't know. Maybe I'll stay here a while. Someone's got to teach you how to fly a real ship. Her eyes widened with excitement. You'd really teach me? Only if you promise not to crash it, he said, grinning. Lyra laughed quietly, a sound that carried warmth through the cold hall. Then it's settled, she said. You're not just a hero anymore. You're family. Outside, the ship's engines hummed as the first dawn rose over the rebuilt planet. The sunlight touched the forest below where green had begun to return. It glimmered off the rivers, washing away the last scars of battle. Ethan looked out at the light spreading across the horizon. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Not the peace of victory, but the peace of connection. He turned to the sisters standing beside him. 2 lives he had saved. 2 voices that had changed the stars, and said softly, maybe this galaxy isn't so cold after all. The stars above shimmered brighter, as if they too were listening. And somewhere deep within the cosmos, the faint echo of Nira's cry, the same one that had once begged for help, now whispered something new.